Imagine waking up one day to discover that, according to official records, you're dead. Not figuratively, literally. Your government declares it. Your bank believes it. Your insurance company shuts down your policies. For the rest of the world, you no longer exist. For most of us, it's a surreal nightmare, the stuff of movies or novels. But for one man, it was his reality. And instead of giving up, he did something extraordinary. He took on the system, the government, and a bank in court. His story is one of determination, absurdity, and ultimately, triumph. This is the incredible tale of Jean Moreau, the man who was dead on paper, but alive in every other sense. Our story begins in the French countryside, in a quiet little village that looks like something out of a postcard. Jean Moreau was a retired carpenter, a man who had spent his life working with his hands and building a reputation for being reliable, kind, and humble. At 58, Jean lived a peaceful life, tending to his garden and enjoying the small pleasures of retirement with his wife Claudette. He had no reason to suspect that his life was about to unravel in the most bizarre way imaginable. It all started on an ordinary morning, over a cup of coffee and a pile of mail. As Jean sifted through the usual bills and advertisements, he noticed a letter from his bank. At first, he thought it was a routine notice, but as he read it, his heart sank. The letter stated that his accounts had been closed due to his death. His pension payments had stopped, his insurance policies were voided, and his entire financial life had come to a screeching halt. Jean sat there, stunned. How could he be declared dead when he was very much alive? Determined to fix what he assumed was a simple mistake, Jean went straight to his local bank branch. He handed the letter to the teller, explaining that there must have been an error. But instead of resolving the issue, the teller only confirmed his worst fears. "According to our records," she said, "you are deceased. There's nothing we can do." Jean protested, pointing to himself and saying, "Do I look dead to you?" But rules were rules, and the bank's hands were tied. The problem, they explained, wasn't just with the bank, it was with the government's records. Jean's next step was the local government office, where he hoped to clear things up quickly. Surely, this was all just a clerical error, something that could be fixed with a few signatures. But when he spoke to the clerk, the story became even stranger. The government's records showed that Jean Moreau had been declared dead by a court order several months earlier. And here's the kicker. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Jean learned that a distant relative, a cousin he barely knew, had gone to court claiming that Jean had been missing for years and was presumed dead. For reasons that remain unclear to this day, the court had accepted the testimony without further investigation. No police reports, no interviews with Jean's wife or neighbors. Just one person's word was enough to legally erase Jean Moreau from existence. For Jean, the implications of this mix-up were devastating. Without a legal identity, he couldn't access his bank accounts, receive his pension, or even prove who he was. It was as if his entire life had been stolen from him. At first, Jean considered giving up. After all, how do you fight a system that insists you're dead? But with the support of his wife Claudette, he decided to fight back. "I'm alive," he said, "and I'm going to prove it." Jean sought the help of Claude Dubois, a retired lawyer with a reputation for taking on unconventional cases. When Jean told his story, Claude was skeptical at first, but after verifying the documents and hearing the full account, he realized the case was both absurd and urgent. Together, they began the uphill battle of reclaiming Jean's identity. Reversing a legal declaration of death was no small task. Jean and Claude had to gather every piece of evidence they could find to prove that Jean was, in fact, alive. They collected his birth certificate, medical records, tax filings, and even personal letters from friends and neighbors. They tracked down the cousin who had declared him dead and demanded an explanation, but the cousin refused to cooperate, leaving Jean to rely on the strength of his own testimony. When the case finally went to court, Jean stood before a skeptical judge and presented his case. He showed his identification, photographs, and even recent medical records. But the most compelling evidence was Jean himself. "Your Honor," he said, "I am standing here before you. How can I be dead?" The room fell silent as the judge studied Jean's face, trying to reconcile the man before him with the legal records declaring him deceased. The bank's lawyers argued that they were not at fault. They insisted that their actions were based on official records, and that Jean's grievance was with the government, not the bank. Meanwhile, the government's representatives admitted that the original declaration of death had been issued hastily, but maintained that reversing it would set a dangerous precedent. It was a bureaucratic nightmare, with no one willing to take responsibility. The judge deliberated for hours, weighing the evidence and considering the broader implications of the case. Finally, he delivered his verdict. In a groundbreaking decision, the court ruled in Jean's favor. The declaration of death was overturned, and Jean's legal identity was restored. The judge acknowledged that the original ruling had been a mistake and praised Jean for his persistence in correcting the error. Jean's victory was more than just a personal triumph. It was a victory for common sense and justice, a reminder that even the most absurd mistakes can be corrected with determination and courage. But for Jean, the battle wasn't about making headlines or setting legal precedents. It was about reclaiming his life, his dignity, his identity, and his right to exist. After months of uncertainty, Jean was finally able to return to his normal life. He reopened his bank accounts, resumed his pension payments, and even received an apology from the government. But the experience left a lasting impact, reminding Jean and everyone who heard his story of the fragility of bureaucracy and the importance of fighting for what's right. Jean Moreau's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It's a reminder that no matter how absurd or overwhelming the odds, the truth has a way of coming to light. So, the next time you feel like the system is against you, remember Jean, the man who proved once and for all that he was very much alive. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of triumph against impossible odds.